Good.
Roll call. Allen, Valley,
Present.
Bowers,
Here.
Considine,
Present.
Farster,
Present.
Gibbler,
Present.
Horstman,
Here.
Hudson,
Present.
Humphrey,
Here.
Kitson,
Present.
Copine,
Present.
McLean, Mamini,
Present.
Nicholson,
Here.
Norberg,
Here.
Palin,
Present.
Sheline,
Here.
Shippert,
Here.
Scrogstad,
Here.
Wentling,
Here.
White, Williams,
Present.
Seaman,
Here.
Olson,
Here. All right, under announcements, please mute or turn off your cell phone so the meeting can run more smoothly without any interruptions. Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? Any corrections? If none, we'll let them stand as read. We're going to change the agenda a little bit to move up some people. They got other meetings they got to go to, Jason Anderson and Andy Shaw. I'm going to go to Jason Anderson at this point to talk about the enterprise zone. And Jason, you want to go ahead and take it from here?
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, everybody. This evening, I, along with two other individuals, are here to address a change in the Lee Ogle Enterprise Zone ordinance that governs abatements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Andy Shaw to go over the changes that are being proposed and to let you know that the Lee Ogle Enterprise Zone Board, which of course is made up of your County Board Chairman Olson, along with the County Board Chairman from Ogle County, the mayors of Dixon, the mayors of Rochelle, and the mayors of the villages of Ashton, Franklin Grove, Mount Morris, Oregon, Dixon, Rochelle, Amboy. The ordinance is being proposed because it's become apparent to us that the enterprise zone program that we set up 5 years ago is somewhat outdated. So Andy will describe the changes to the ordinance, and then I will take the opportunity, along with the help of Claire Walter, who's with me tonight, to talk about a specific project in Rochelle that we are hoping that this ordinance will help attract. So Andy, if you'd like to go forward and explain the changes in the ordinance, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thank you, Lee County Board. The enterprise zone, the Lee Ogle Enterprise Zone, which you folks are a part of, was presented with this request and opportunity for a large expansion of a company relocating a facility into Rochelle with a lot of new jobs and new investment. And part of that was, among other things, they're working with the city on utilities and whatnot. But another thing was an incentive request from the company. What they asked for specifically was an extra 10 additional years of a real estate tax abatement that was ongoing for one of the buildings that they are going to occupy. So that's what started the discussion off, and we'll talk about the project in a bit and what all is entailed with that. But with this, it was a little somewhat unusual. They asked to extend an existing abatement, but in exchange, in light of a very large capital expense and a very large amount of new jobs being created in our region. So we were, of course, very interested in talking more about that, and we did some analysis of it with our neighboring enterprise zones, and found that we are probably not where we should be, especially when it comes to these largest projects. These are very, very large projects that have a very high impact on the region with a lot of jobs. And that's, the kind of things that we really love to be able to bring. So to accommodate that, then what we have then is an amending ordinance for the zone to consider that would implement what they are asking what it does, so the enterprise zone has a 6-year 50% abatement schedule at the present time under the ordinances that have been passed in the past. So it preserves that for the most part, for probably for almost all other projects going forward, even in this new amendment, as something called base abatement. And that would be that 6-year 50% abatement would continue in that form. Just would have a name called base abatement.
Andy,
So, yeah.
Andy, we've met with about 15 taxing districts here in the last 2 weeks. And one thing that's come to my attention is not everybody may necessarily understand what a tax abatement is. Can you give us just a real brief description of what that is and how that applies at a 50% level?
So when a company builds a facility or improves one, the amount of that improvement, we've got a recent project that's doing a rooftop solar on a factory in Dixon. So that's the improvement that's happening. An improvement like that is taxable. The factory was already there though. And so sometimes that improvement will raise the assessment, and then that improvement is allowed to be abated. So that improvement then gets that 50% abatement applied to it. And then that discount, so to speak, applies to that portion of the real estate tax bill. So it's new improvements in these cases. It's something that wasn't in the tax base before the project, and then it's added on. And then the tax districts that are involved with that property get 50% of that new EAV added to their tax base, and the other 50% is abated for those 6 years. So that's how, maybe a little bit of a generalization, but my pretty good understanding of that. But yeah, so it's new money. It's not abating existing taxes in these cases. These are improvements that are added by an enterprise zone project. The enterprise zone project has to apply to me. They pay a fee, and they tell us what they're doing. They have to have a building permit to keep everything legit. They have to have a legitimate building permit for their project from the governing authority of their facility. So everything is very in order, and then it can go forward in that way as soon as it does hit the tax bill as an improvement. And that is typically the first full year that it's used in its business use. So if a company builds something, it might be a year and a half before it actually hits their tax bill. So there's some delays that are built into the process. But yeah, so that's kind of the very generalized overview of how abatement works. And again, we do 6 years, 50% abatement at the present time. With this, we would like to add 2 additional tiers of abatement that could be available for companies that do these extremely large projects. And what they would be, and you've got them there in your ordinance, they're called in the middle tier, and this was called extended abatement. And it adds 4 years of 50% abatement. So it would be 10 total years available for this type of thing. These types of projects need to have a $50 million capital investment. That's a combination of manufacturing machinery, or the real estate improvements are the capital investment going on there. And then they also need to have 75 new jobs to qualify for that middle tier. And then there's a compliance measure in the ordinance there that they need to give me a certification, a third-party certification each year that those jobs are still in place. And they need to maintain 95% of those jobs for that entire period. So that's the extended abatement.
And Andy, if they drop below, the job numbers that have been committed to, below the 95% threshold, what happens then?
The abatement would end. So that would be the end of it at that point. So if
so there's a safeguard in place.
Yeah, that is our strong strings on it to know that we're being responsible with this. And then the highest tier then is called high impact abatement. And that's a top tier. This is what would apply to the project that we'll be talking about. And it adds 10 years of 50% abatement to a project that has that base. You know, there could be 6 plus the 10 with that. To get that one is going to be quite a bit higher. It's $100 million capital investment minimum and 125 new jobs created. And then also, due to the nature of the project that they're going to talk about, they are committing to salary numbers that are pretty substantial for good factory jobs for our area. We've added that to the ordinance as well, where they need to have those 125 jobs, but also have them at a 50,000 or greater annual pay rate, exclusive of benefits for the factory workers. And these are the hourly workers of the facility. And again, they need to maintain 95% of those jobs to keep that abatement in place. With both of those, due to again, what I mentioned, that this is a project that wants to take over an abatement schedule that's already running and has 2 years remaining. Both of these tiers have an allowance for that. A company can, as long as they're still under an abatement schedule, keep that running through this extended period. But it is, again, in exchange for a massive new investment and new job creation. So a company that's just under the abatement and has already done something, this doesn't apply to them. It's there again in your ordinance, you can see, but these things need to happen after the 1st of January of this year. So we don't really have a risk of going back in time and changing things otherwise.
So Andy, we are basically proposing taking the base tier, which is 6 years at 50%, adding a second tier that would be 10 years at 50% abatement, with a requirement that $50 million be invested and 75 jobs be created, and to hold 95% of those jobs or the abatement disappears. And then to add that top high impact tier, we're talking about $100 million investment, 125 jobs minimum, and a salary of $50,000 or $25 to $27 an hour on average for wages. And if they fall below these criterias, they lose the abatement. Is that a good?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And did you want to add any more than that? We can then field questions about the change in the ordinance before I talk about the Rochelle project.
Yeah, just to say, you know, we've had good conversations with various boards. Jason and I have, and company representatives as well. Good questions, a lot of fair questions through this process, you know, and Jason, you can touch on this a little bit too, but, you know, there's been questions, you know, do these big industrial projects, what do they do for our communities? You know, what do we do this? Should we do this? You know, should we be attracting these large facilities? You know, I think they're good for all of us, honestly. But I work in this field, so I'm perhaps biased, but these incentives, you know, get these projects to move forward and move into our area. And they really, in my opinion, they give us a shot at keeping our kids in our community, getting them to move back after college.
Andy,
So, you know, I think the philosophy of this is an important part of what I'd like you to talk about too. But yeah, I'll pass it over to you now.
Yeah, the other thing, Andy, I'd like you to explain is that the Enterprise Zone Board, as I mentioned, is made up of 9 units of government, which Lee County is one. Lee, Ogle, Dixon, Rochelle, as I mentioned, the 9 units of government. It's imperative for any of this to go into force that all 9 units of government must pass it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, to amend the enterprise zone incentive in any part of the zone, we need to amend the ordinance in each unit of government, just like when we amend the zone to add areas on the map. In one of the cities, all of those cities need to pass the same amending ordinance to make that possible.
along with the two counties.
And again, yes, the two counties.
And Ogle County met this week and unanimously passed the resolution, the ordinance. City of Rochelle's passed it and several others have. But let's open this up for any questions about the ordinance and the changes, and then I'll explain to you about a project that we want to apply this to as soon as we can. So questions or comments?
Questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Was that go ahead for me or?
Yes, I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Oh, yep. So my main question is does the changes involved, Andy, and I guess this is to you, does the changes involved in the ordinance, does this make us competitive? Because really in the realm of economic development, it's all about being competitive. We have to be at least able to beat, what our competition is doing. Does this bring us, and you'd mentioned about how we were a little dated with what we were been doing before. Some of the things that you mentioned, I remember from my township days. But does this bring us up to speed where other districts are and so that we can be competitive?
Yes, we do. And this top tier is very unusual and very high. And so it probably won't have as much application, if at all, beyond this particular company. But the middle tier, I believe, will have some application. Either of these are very, very high level. But yeah, we think that they will have good application.
Andy,
And-
tell them about the enterprise zones around us in terms of what they're doing. Because when Jim talks about competition, our competition is DeKalb, Whiteside,
Right.
Stevenson.
Yeah, so we did a comparison, and enterprise zone comparisons are difficult because of how people do things differently. These are local decisions that are made on abatement. Some zones do 100% abatement in the first several years, and then they'll go to 50 for a few years. Some do 100 for 10 straight years. So it's comparisons are problematic because of that. And so I did a comparison as a 20-year average to smooth that out and to make it make sense. And what I found was we would be, I'm sitting there too.
I think we lost you, Andy.
I'm here. I'm trying to see, it would average out, what we do now would average out to about 15% over 20 years. And then the mid-tier would average out to about 25% over those 20 years. Again, I'm just lengthening that out just so the average, so we can do comparable comparisons. And then this highest tier would be 40% over that time frame. And so comparing that to some other zones, hold on.
Marvin, you need to mute.
You got so a comparison to a similar type of tier in DeKalb County is 37.5%. The difference being one single year of abatement there. They'd have a 15-year abatement for something comparable. And then in Stevenson County, they are at about 35% over that time. And that would be a little bit less than this highest tier we're doing, but still more generous than the middle tier we would be creating. And so we're right in the zone there that we think that it's a fair thing to everybody. They do, again, different things in different places. Whiteside County recently has had, I heard they had it in a previous project, but it's not currently available. But they did do a 10-year 100% for the Walmart distribution center several years back when that was built. So that averages out to, of course, 50% over the 20 years. That's a little bit stronger than what we're asking. Bureau Putnam south of us would average out to 50% over 20 years. They're similar. And they actually do it for any project in Bureau Putnam, 100% for 10 years.
I think
So
to
far
summarize,
more
though,
generous than what we do.
to summarize,
Yeah.
is that this change in ordinance kind of puts us in the middle of the pack of all the enterprise zones around us. It doesn't put us as giving any
Right.
more greater abatements than the group or less. It puts us in the middle of the pack. Is that a fair assessment, Andy?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
But it does allow us to be competitive.
Right. But it also preserves a program that's basically working for the most part. Our 6-year 50% is basically working fine. And we haven't had a lot of, we haven't needed to come to you until now to address it. So it has generally been fine to have what we do. And that's why we think tiers make the most sense rather than doing something more broad.
And what seemingly has made sense now, as Jim referred to this idea of tiers, is that the smaller the project, the lesser the impact to the taxing body. The middle tier, where you got a $50 million investment, we've added to the benefit there. And then when you get these really big opportunities, then of course you've expanded it. So in other words, the incentive is kind of equal to the level of the project and the economic impact a project has on a community or in a region. Other questions among you all this evening?
Dave Valley has one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Shaw. My question is a couple questions here. First, you're saying a $50,000 a year job. Is there any COLAs figured in on this? And if not, because that would make it a $56,000 job in 6 years. And then how many jobs are going to be temp services, part-time and stuff? Because our local services end up subsidizing these people. I doubt if this job only has 100 people. Do they have 200 temp services or pay? Because jobs that pay less than prevailing wage or less than a living wage are detrimental to our area. They really drag you down through your schools, through your townships, through your everything, because these people are barely making a living. And how do we determine in 6 years how they're going to act the next 10 years when we don't even have a COLA? At that time, this would be less than a minimum wage job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Let me just go ahead, since you asked those questions, to explain the project that we want to apply. If this ordinance passes, this will be the first project that it would apply to. And project is known as Project Jackpot. Project Jackpot is a group of, is a company that has come in to take control of the Nippon Sharyo campus there on Route 88 in Rochelle. Both buildings and all the assets there is what this project is all about. They are proposed, and they've done this in writing. They've given this to us as the criteria for their qualifying for this ordinance and the commitment to our community. We'll spend $130 million to redevelop the entire campus. That's buildings, equipment, all in. $130 million is what they're committing to. They are committing to creating a minimum of 125 jobs, with the average starting wage being right at that $25 to $27 an hour wage for hour. Now that's the hourly wage. That's before any benefits. It's before medical insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, vacation pay. That's the base wage. The company is committed to let me put it this way. There's a huge amount of utility infrastructure that this company is going to require. And so there is along with this abatement schedule, there is a very complicated development agreement that the city of Rochelle and Rochelle Municipal Utilities is working together to put a cost share on the infrastructure improvements that need to be made. And so there is a long-term commitment that will be made through that development agreement to buy a certain amount of power and to maintain a certain level of service from a utility standpoint. So it's a very, very long-term, highly capital-intensive commitment that this company will make. In regards to understanding if there's a COLA in the wages, Claire Walter may or may not be qualified to do that. Claire is with us. She is a consultant to Project Jackpot. And I'd like to ask her if she's got any input into that question. But before we go there, I want you to know this is her. She represents a company called Grant Thornton, and Claire is the person who can speak specifically to the company and the project. So Claire, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I do not significantly. I don't have all of the details in terms of any sort of COLA adjustment, but something to keep in mind is that this company is it's been around for over 100 years manufacturing. They've got 17 production facilities across the United States. They're currently headquartered in Illinois. Most of their facilities that they've been in are the facilities they started in. So they've been in, one of their facilities for 75 years. So they are definitely focused on the long-term commitment to the community. While they're still processing things, they have already started through us having conversations with school districts to talk about setting up sorts of training plans and partnering to actually, really become ingrained within the Rochelle community. So while I don't have details on necessarily how that cost of living, they are an established company that has been around for a very long time with employees that a lot of times it ends up being that multiple generations work at one plant. So they definitely have a history of being good corporate citizens and a good place to work.
Now, Claire, she brings up an interesting point that's really important for us to all understand in terms of the economic impact to the communities around Rochelle. That is the whole workforce development effort. One of the conversations that we're beginning to have, we'll have more conversations like this if we can get this abatement schedule put together and the development agreement is finalized in the next few months. But it's the idea of industrial arts being reintroduced into educational institutions in the area where we need to train up an advanced manufacturing workforce. The days in which these large manufacturing plants, and I don't know that Claire said this, but this is, and I know this has been said in other meetings, this is a steel type of business, making steel and making steel products. It's not like, I grew up in Sterling, not too far from Northwestern Steel and Wire, with all the smoke and the pollution and all the noise and everything. Advanced manufacturing is made up of computers and robots. It's important that we really start to think about how we can educate our workforce here locally, and that the jobs that are created here through a company like Jackpot, these young people can get a living wage job that will then allow them to stay in our communities, raise families in our communities, buy homes, populate our schools, and have a living wage. And so that is what is so important when it comes to landing high impact projects like this Project Jackpot.
I think Marilyn's got a question.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the job requirements on the abatements, you've got a numbers and you've also got a salary. Are those just on what I'm going to call the workers, the maintenance workers, the factory workers, or does management figure into those computations on salary and numbers?
Marilyn, that's a really good question. And no, they don't. The hourly wage is what we're talking about on the $52,000 a year earnings. Salaried wages would be certainly above and beyond that for most positions in the salaried ranks. So we're talking a minimum of 150 jobs for this startup, and doing some math, you can assume probably 75 to 80% would be hourly workers, with a 15 to 20% being on the salaried side.
Okay, so the jobs number would include the management.
Yes, the 150 jobs, yes, to
Okay.
start with.
Well, wait,
Thank you.
This-
so- that's this company in particular is with that number, but in the ordinance itself, it calls for 125 new full-time workers with an average annual non-managerial pay rate of 50,000 or greater, exclusive of benefits. So the ordinance itself is looking at the non-manager staff of the facility. But this
Okay,
company has
I
given us a
didn't
larger.
catch that when I read it. Thank you.
Yeah,
I want to make one more thing that needs to be clarified in regards to Jackpot. So as you know, there are 2 buildings associated in the Nippon Sharyo campus. The building to the east, which was about a 500,000 square foot building, was built in 2010 and 11. That building was abated for the 6-year plan, and the abatement expired. And that building has now been fully assessed and fully taxable. That does not apply to this ordinance. It's only the west building, which is about a 325,000 square foot building that was built about 4 years ago, that would apply in this case. So we're only abating half of the campus. And that would be taking a building that is currently under a 6-year abatement that has 2 years left to go and would be extended for 10 years beyond that. So we're only talking about, for this project, abating part of the facility, part of the campus. A brand new manufacturing plant, and I really think this is an important thing for Lee County Board to know and understand. And some of you have actually been to Rochelle and toured the area south of Rochelle that's in Lee County, south of the ethanol plant. When we look at these big high impact projects that are going to spend 50 to 100 to 150 million dollars, these kinds of projects generally require a significant amount of power, natural gas, water, sewer, fiber. The only area that has currently been developed in Lee and Ogle County that would have the amount of infrastructure to handle the size of a large impact project that would qualify for this tier number 3 is there in Lee County. It's in that land south of the county line. The Greater Rochelle Economic Development Corporation has currently approximately 1,000 acres right there on the county line south into Lee County under options. And we are marketing that property for they call them mega projects. Now, will we take a smaller project than 100 million? You bet we would. But the point is that Rochelle has invested almost $30 million in water, power, sewer, and rail that currently now extends into Lee County. And this is where any kind of new project in Lee and Ogle County, unless I'm not aware of a site in either county that has that much utility and infrastructure, this is the place where these kinds of projects would land.
All right. Tom Kitson's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, you or Andy, either one, can you explain to us, I think it's a good program, but can you explain to us how and what's the steps and how's the procedure in the future, not just with this one company, but anybody who comes in through this new ordinance, that we police what's going on, to know that the jobs are there, to know that the money they spend is correct? I mean, we don't want to go in there and, I'm assuming, want to examine their books, but how do we do this to be sure that we don't get
Andy actually worked on that. And so, Andy, I'm going to let you go ahead and address that.
I am madly turning the pages here in my ordinance.
Andy, you got to turn and talk into your microphone.
I'm facing the wrong way as I'm doing it. But yeah, basically, yeah, a company would approach us and, you know, things of this nature take a long time. And so they would do that. but they would execute a memorandum of understanding outlining what they were investing and what they were doing and how many people they were going to hire. And that would all be vetted. We would know what they're doing prior to any abatement ever occurring, because the abatement would be, a couple years into the future before it would begin. So we would have a very good understanding of whether they did what they were supposed to do before an abatement would even begin. But they would need to meet these criteria in the ordinance to do that.
How about 6, 8, 10 years later? And the reason I ask is we in the not too distant past had a company come to us and ask to extend their abatement, and to find out that they did not have the number of employees they'd agreed to have.
Mhm.
And so we didn't know that initially going into it. So how 8, 10 years down, who's going to police it, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, the enterprise zone administrator would do that. Each year would be getting that information. And it calls for that in here to have it a third party certified check on that data to make sure that it was still happening and jobs were there.
In other words, Bob, there's an audit that the administrator would be responsible to get, so make sure, because as Andy said, if they fall below 95% of the committed jobs, when the project comes, the abatement is removed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
I think Danielle, did you have a question? Nope. Any more questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple.
Sure.
Jim Horstman. My questions go to the terms of the proposed ordinance. The first thing I noticed that the date January 1, 2017 appears throughout the document. Is this intended to be a retroactive abatement?
No, because these new abatement classifications are also referenced as they need to have be a project that occurred after the first of this year of 2021. But this amending ordinance, what it's doing is replacing a section of the ordinance that was passed in December of 2015. That ordinance initiated this enterprise zone, which started on January 1 of 2017. And so that language was just carried over from the previous ordinance.
Well, if it's intended to be effective now, isn't that language, shouldn't that be amended?
Well, we still have projects that are being abated under these terms, that started in that time frame, and so I think we need to leave that, in place, because we have dozens of things that are being abated by the county right now, and so that could potentially, I think, be disruptive to our, authority to do what we've already promised to do.
Okay. My second question is, you had mentioned earlier the abatement goes only toward new improvements, right?
Abatements, yeah, they're applied to improvements to the real estate, although there's occasionally things that are not applicable in the law. They can't abate pavement and some things that are outside of an actual structure of a building. But yeah, abatement applies to the improvements that are made. And so it's typically the building minus the land.
Now, to clarify something though, in regards to Project Jackpot, the unusual dynamic to this is that because the building that is currently under the abatement is going to be a part of this $130 million improvement, we would be extending, and this may or may not involve actually building additions outside the building. But this, in this case of Jackpot, would be adding 10 years to a 6-year abatement. So this is a little unusual in the sense that that's going to apply to this project. If Jackpot says we're to build a big addition to that, either the east building or the west building, as I mentioned, the east building is no longer being abated. But let's just say they put a $4 million addition onto the east building. The incremental increase on that would be abatable. Am I right, Andy?
Yes.
So if the EAV goes up, then there would be an abatement that would apply to those improvements.
My question is a simple one. Where in the ordinance does it say the abatement is limited to the improvements? All I see is referenced in the 3 tiers. It just says abatement amount 50%. It doesn't seem anywhere in the ordinance to say clearly that the abatement would be limited to the new improvements.
So if you go back, I believe this covers it, but it's the first portion of the ordinance before you. Section 1 is being deleted and replaced with the following text. And then, or excuse me, section 2 is replaced with the following text. And then that first paragraph of the section 2 property tax abatement, at the end of that, it says, in no event shall any abatement exceed the amount attributable to the construction of the improvements or the renovation or rehabilitation of existing improvements on such property. So that lays it out that abatement can only apply to real estate improvements.
Well, I saw that. My concern is that it really doesn't say that. I mean, you can guess that may have been the intent, but in this whole ordinance, it never just comes out and says plainly, the abatement applies only to new improvements. And if you read that paragraph and you guess that may have been the intent, but when you go tier by tier, you see the reference to the amount of the abatement and it just says a flat 50%. So I'm worried about the lack of clarity on what is a pretty important point.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at each of those more closely, but you know, we would never have the authority to exceed state law. You know, you can't write an ordinance that overrides state law on abatement. So it's just not legally possible to do that. So even if it wasn't clearly stated, you know, your county assessor and clerk would never be able to do beyond what was legally permissible.
I mean, is there any reason why that can't be clarified? To substitute for that paragraph, a simple statement that the abatements created herein apply only to new improvements made by the applicant on the property.
I'm going to ask a layman's question, and that is, how would any kind of a $50 million or $100 million improvement not increase the value of a project?
No, I suppose it would. I'm just saying, shouldn't the document clearly identify what the abatement applies to? Not to the whole tax bill, but only to that part of the value that's created by the new improvements.
That's how it's been applied in the abatement program up to this point in time. Is it not, Andy?
Yes, absolutely. But, you know, again, as you mentioned, Jason, that, you know, there is a novel aspect to this where in this case, they aren't absolutely new improvements with the application that we're foreseeing here. They are improvements that were new when that project started under its base abatement 4 years ago. They were new then, but
Right.
They aren't necessarily new now. The qualification now is that they're making a new investment and they're creating new jobs, but they're extending what was new. So I think you're not going to see the word new under the later tiers because we were trying to incorporate that pathway.
The other point that I think is important to know in terms of what we're talking about when it comes to jackpot, this only applies to businesses that have currently tax abatable projects that are being tax abated. And those projects are the only ones that would be eligible to be extended. Now, to extend it, you have to spend $50 million and hire a minimum of 75 people, or hire 125 more people and spend $100 million more. So that is clearly a part of what we're proposing here. Now, to get back to what I think is your concern, this project or this ordinance will likely only apply to new projects, something brand new. So taking a 50, 75 acre piece of land and putting a 50 to $100 million improvement on it. That's the only kinds of projects that will be able to qualify for this going forward.
Well, I don't want to belabor this, but my specific concern is that in light of the ambiguity of the ordinance, a project lawyer comes in and says, we're entitled to 50% abatement of the entire property tax bill, because that's what this says. That's my concern. It's because the ordinance doesn't specifically say that the abatement goes only to improvements.
I mean,
That's it in a nutshell.
I believe it does, though. I'm seeing this as, and that's the way I would read it in implementing it, but you know, it can't exceed the amount attributable to the construction of the improvements. You know, I mean, I read that as that's how that project constructed those improvements, and those are what can be abated. And this language is what we have in the ordinance that operates right now. It's the same. So I think it was acceptable at the state level when they certified the zone.
I think Mr. Bowers has a question also.
Not so much a question. I appreciate Jim Horstman's line of questioning. As I read at the bottom of page 9 in section 3 about the high impact abatement, it's like 4 lines up from the bottom. Abatement shall only apply to taxes assessed on improvements. I guess the question is that address your concern, Jim?
I'm looking for it.
Bottom of page 9, 4 lines up from the bottom. It seems like it may.
Looks like it clarifies it.
Yeah, I think it's important to, an important question, but it appears like it might be addressed by that statement.
Yeah, and if that appears on each of them, I think that's enough, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Marilyn?
Thank you. You say there's still a remaining abatement on the west building. When that was initially granted,
Mhm.
were there conditions on it that, you know, why is it, you know, it's a vacant building.
Mhm.
Why is there a remaining abatement? I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight.
Sure. No, thank you. Yeah, I get the question. This enterprise zone was bridging projects that came to pass in the old enterprise zone, the old Lee County enterprise zone from the mid-80s that existed until the end of 2016. In that ordinance, there were not these strings. They just weren't there. In the new ordinance, it did allow old projects to come forward into the new zone under the terms that they originally granted under. And so I did some research on this because we were considering asking this company to do a transfer process through the enterprise zone board, which is in the new ordinance. For a new company is not supposed to automatically get the abatement that is occurring there when they didn't construct it. That's in the ordinance. Came under actually
Andy,
but
hey, Andy.
it actually doesn't have that requirement.
Andy, you're breaking up for
Yeah.
some reason. Can you go back about 2 sentences?
So we don't have those strings are not available to us on a project that came from the old enterprise zone. We're bound by the original terms and they don't have these requirements. The new ordinance is far stronger, and in the future we wouldn't have had this opportunity to do what we're doing because of that. But due to that, there is 2 years remaining regardless. And we still feel like this is a strong project and worth doing this for.
And the point, Marilyn, is the east building is not able to go with any tax abatement extension because its abatement schedule expired. The west building is eligible under law to be extended with a change in the ordinance because it's still under an abatement. If that had expired, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But-
Okay,
okay.
let's assume we had the proposed ordinance in effect X number of years ago when Nippon Sherrio first appeared on the scene. And it had these restrictions in the ordinance at that time. I realize it didn't, but let's assume for a moment that it did. And then as things happened and Nippon Sherrio left us, would there still be an abatement remaining for a new company to come in? You follow where I'm going?
If the rules that we're applying today were in effect 5 years ago, would we be able to do this?
Yeah, that's my question.
Andy?
No, I don't think so. I don't know how we would do it. There's perhaps a path through a general abatement resolution. But I think through the enterprise zone program specifically, we would be tied down on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Norberg.
Yes, I'd like to move on with this. I think I'm going to make a motion that we approve this ordinance.
Do I have a second? John Nicholson seconds. Tonight on ordinance and resolutions, I'm going to do by voice vote unless a board member would request a roll call. So if anybody has a problem, we'll do a voice vote on this. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your input.
Thank you very much. I guess I heard it's a unanimous, and it was unanimous at Ogle County. We appreciate your support. We're looking forward to working with the Lee County Board on bringing more development into your county.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jason.
I'm also going to move the agenda around a little bit for the Second Amendment people that's here tonight. I don't want to bore them to death with our meeting. So we're going to move up to that next. Mr. Nicholson, you want to explain what we're voting on tonight?
This was originally brought up due to the fact that, the Second Amendment guarantees the right of the average citizen to keep and bear arms. It's been there since the Constitution was developed. And over the course of the last 20, 30 years, there's been erosion of that amendment. And we would like to pass this resolution to show support for the Second Amendment in its entirety. And if you read through the verbiage, it basically states in there that that's what we want to do.
Is that in a motion format?
I will make well, we have a gentleman over here who wants to speak. Do you want him to speak under the discussion section, Bob? But I will make a motion with one minor amendment to it. Get down to the last paragraph. It basically says that we have to prepare and deliver certified copies of this resolution to all members of the Illinois General Assembly and to the office of the governor. That gets to be quite expensive. And I would like to amend that to say we would email them to those particular offices. But other than that, I'd like to see this motion passed.
All right. Do I have a second? Casey Considine seconds it. Any more discussion?
There's discussion.
Well, you're not on we didn't have you sign in when you got here. We really can't let you, but go ahead real quick. What do you got to say?
Anyhow, I'd just like to tell a story. This is a true story. It happened in Germany. And this is just one example of where gun control, the things that it can lead to, and why the Second Amendment is so important. And I hope that we pass some type of resolution to protect the Second Amendment in this county. In the 1896 Olympics, Alfred Flatow, a Jew, won the gold medal in gymnastics for Germany. Life was good then. Years go by, World War I comes and goes, and Germany struggles to find its identity. In 1932, the Weimar Republic government decrees all guns must be registered and promised would only be collected in times of major unrest. Alfred Flatow, a good German citizen, registers his 3 guns. In 1933, a year later, Adolf Hitler gains power. The Nazis used the Registration Act to identify and seize as many guns as they can. Local police many times are forced to conduct door-to-door searches and seizures, mainly in Jewish communities, to seize as many guns as possible. Then in 1936, Hitler calls for unity and fakes tolerance of the Jews and asks for national unity for the Olympics that will be held in Germany that year. Many medals are then taken by German Jews. In 1938, 2 years later, all Jews are ordered to surrender their guns and are blamed for all the domestic problems in Germany. Alfred Flatow, a good German citizen, walks to a police station and surrenders his guns. He and others in line are promptly arrested and turned over to the Gestapo or the federal police. 4 years later, in 1942, Alfred starves to death in a concentration camp. About the same time, the US Congress votes to uphold the Second Amendment in our country, seeing what was going on in Nazi Germany. One wonders what thoughts occurred to Alfred as he lay starving for 4 years. Maybe he thought of the Olympics or of a better Germany. Did he wonder if he should not have registered his guns in 1932? Or should he have not surrendered them to a Berlin police station in 1938? I guess we will never know, but I'll bet Alfred wishes he had a place of sanctuary back then like we're looking for now. And as a final note, over 80 German Jewish medalists, men and women, that won many medals for Germany were rounded up and did not survive the war. Thank you, and I hope you pass the resolution.
Thank you. Any more discussion amongst board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I think there was a young lady that was back there you said was going to speak.
Later, but thank you for reminding
Oh,
me.
all right.
She's on a different subject, so. Thank you, though. Dave Valley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the status of these bills right now in the House, in the Senate? I've just looked it up. Are they still unvoted on? Are they still open? I can't find the bills right off to, what do they say? Or are they?
I don't know what you're looking at there. I don't know what.
House Bill 1465, 1467, 1468, and Senate Bill 1657. I found Senate Bill. Are these still unvoted on, or are they? And is there anything we can do that would supersede a state law if this was a state law?
No, we cannot supersede a state law.
It's the way it's written like it is, Dave, is
Thank
that
you.
we can't supersede the state law. And simple as that. I wish we could. Some ways we could.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I
Jim,
want to thank and I couldn't see who it was that was speaking, but appreciate that story. And I think it's really important that local governments such as ours make a stand and send a message to the General Assembly. Can we overrule state law? No, but we can make a statement in regards to our local communities and how important it is that we maintain the Second Amendment and our gun rights as we stand here. We have a General Assembly that is removed from rural Illinois. They are, the majority is in Chicago. We know what the laws that they had passed in Chicago have been, and they really don't apply here to us. They really don't apply to America in general. But we need to send this message. This resolution is important to send, and I strongly in favor of it, and I'm glad that this was brought forward. Thank you very much.
thank you, Jim. All those in favor? Signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
all those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for your input. Let's go back to, get back on track. I've got no petitions to the zoning board. no petitions to the planning commission, no petitions from the zoning board, no petitions from the planning commission. Any board member comments at this time?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
In the last couple of weeks, I received several phone calls and emails from people saying they represented petitioners who had matters before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I had questions about how and whether I should respond to those phone calls and emails. And I got some very helpful advice from Mr. Boonstra. I was wondering if he could take a moment to share that advice with the entire board.
I'm sure he'd love to.
This is certainly going to be a paraphrasing of what I gave Mr. Horstman, but
Charlie, can you speak up, please?
yeah, absolutely. The information that I gave Mr. Horstman was, at least from the zoning board perspective, the zoning board members are sitting as triers of fact during the hearings. It is my opinion that they are to be semi-sequestered, and I've told them this, I've had this conversation with them before. If you're having conversations with any interested party, whether it be the petitioner or the any interested party that is an adjoining landowner or anything like that, I believe it to be improper during the proceedings once the evidence is to start being presented, because you're there sitting there as the trier of fact. It would just be like a jury trial in a criminal court. You're not to have the state talking to you or defense counsel talking to you if you're a jury. So it's the same type of thing that I would say it kind of bleeds over into county board perspective. If something is to come before the board, obviously you have a duty to your constituents, but I believe that you need to be above reproach, make sure you do not have the conversations that would not be outside of those hearings to introduce new evidence or anything of that nature. So that's kind of paraphrasing what I told Mr. Horstman. Mr. Horstman, if I left something out, please feel free to jump in. I know there was a lot in the email.
No, I think that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we segue right into public visitor comments, and we have Jennifer Lawson with us today. She wants to speak to us first. Jennifer?
Afternoon. Sorry. First of all, Mr. Olson, Lee County Board members, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me tonight. So my name is Jennifer Fleming Lawson. I am a great granddaughter of Joseph Crawford, who performed surveys for the area, for this local area here for President Abraham Lincoln, was paid in farmland from Dixon to Franklin Grove. I am the granddaughter of Neil Fleming, who is a family doctor who lived in Franklin Grove. That large home that's the bed and breakfast there off of 38 was my dad's and my grandpa's family home. And he practiced in Amboy. I am the daughter of Joseph and Linda Fleming, who own the famous Landmark Restaurant in Grand Detour and the small business Framing by Lyndon Dixon. I am a 1991 graduate from high school at Dixon High School. I have a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Milwaukee School of Engineering, a Master of Science in Project Management from the University of Wisconsin. I'm currently an Environmental Health and Safety Manager at a major employer in Sterling, Illinois. I have lived in Lee County most of my life, married another individual from this area that is also a high school graduate and is also a lifelong resident of Lee County. We've been married for almost 18 years. He'll tell you 15. And we have 3 children that are also part of this community. We built a house in the country in 2006. This house that we built in the country away from the city for the view of the trees, the wildlife, the peace and quiet of this country, not a view of several miles of black glass and humming inverter stations with metal chain link, barbed wire top fences, security lights, and cameras. While I may not be a farmer, I am aware of the value of farming and farmland in Lee County. I may not be a doctor, a restaurant owner, or a small business owner. However, I am a longtime resident with strong family history based in Lee County. As I previously mentioned, I am the EHS manager at a large local employer. I am a licensed safety professional and a certified environmental manager, and I manage the 600 kilowatt solar systems currently installed at this employer. Therefore, I am aware of the benefits of green energy, but I also know the risks of these downfalls as well. While I agree that clean green energy is the direction that this country does need to go and move towards. I feel that the project that is upcoming is not thoroughly thought out or planned out in detail, and the risks outweigh the opportunities at this time. During the recent hearings, expert witnesses responded to the questions from local Lee County residents with many uncertainties that were expressed by multiple "I do not know" and "we have not done that" responses. These responses indicate to me that a large project of this size has too many risks that outweigh the opportunities. With the uncertain expert witness responses, can you in clear conscience state that moving forward with this project is the best decision for all involved and affected at this time? I am not saying to turn down this project or future projects, but you as elected individuals that are here to represent Lee County residents have a commitment to review and evaluate the upcoming project to determine what is best for all Lee County residents. Thank you. Whether they are directly benefiting from this project or affected by the project by being adjacent to it. The risks of such a large project are not beneficial to Lee County for this company to have a feather in their cap as their first project of this size. What you decide will set the precedence for any upcoming projects, whether in Lee County or another county. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now we're going to go to, on Zoom, Jamie Lawson.
Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could, before I do my speech, could I just ask Charlie Boonstra 2 questions regarding his last statement on emails?
I think maybe you could do that off out of the environment of the meeting. I would just soon you go ahead and read your statement, or go ahead.
Okay. I think it's imperative, though. My 2 questions would be for everyone, that when Charlie made the comment, everyone heard it. I would just like to clarify his statement. If possible, I would love to do it in front of an audience instead of in private.
Charlie?
Charlie, if you can hear me, I was just curious if your last statement, are the emails that these people are receiving, are they on government or county emails, or are they on personal emails?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. The email that
Your last comment you just made, Mr. Boonstra, when you just got up there and spoke about emails.
Well, I'm going to stop this now. We're not on a trial here.
Okay.
You've got 5-10 minutes to talk to us, whatever it is.
Okay. All right.
5 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for your time. When I built my house in South Dixon, I'm going to apologize up front if I get to screaming or talking fast, because I get emotional and a little bit of nerves too. When I built my house in South Dixon Township, I had to sign the farmland preservation policy, which reads, whereas the majority of land in Lee County is used primarily for agricultural purposes, while at the same time the need for residential housing is increasing, thereby creating the potential for conflict between residents of new and existing residential subdivisions developed in close proximity to existing farmland. And whereas when you live within a rural area in Lee County, you may encounter a number of practices that the area farmers have been and will be doing in their normal farming practices, carried out for agricultural purposes, such as wide, slow-moving farm equipment on roads or in fields at various times of day and night. Number 2, noise, dust, or odors from operating machinery, as well as herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, and manure being applied to the farmland. Number 3, wind-blown debris such as corn stalks, soybean residue, husks, wheat, straw, etc. On rare occasions, airplanes applying herbicides, pesticides, or other materials. Odors from confined livestock operations or pastured livestock manure. Drainage problems and flooding may occur during heavy rainfalls. When that was presented to me to sign, after reading the policy, I gladly signed it because that was the very reason that I was moving out there to begin with. When I first heard of a massive project being proposed that would envelop a significant portion of South Dixon Township, I chose to get involved in the zoning process because it threatened the very reason I chose a rural setting to live. One of the first things I heard while attending the first county board meeting via Zoom on 12/3/20 was Dennis Pfeiffer requesting special use to sell farm products. After he gave all the details, one of the board members told Dennis to come up with a perimeter size, because he did not have a perimeter size, to come up with a perimeter size for the special use area and to keep in mind that less is better. They then moved to finding of facts and asked these 5 questions. Effect of character of the neighborhood, the effect of traffic conditions, the effect to public utility facilities, the effect of public health, safety, and welfare, the effect on surrounding properties, and the effect upon environmental concerns. If these same questions were asked of the proposed South Dixon Township project, I would imagine most answers would be a lot different and would not logically justify the project. So in closing, I would like to ask the Lee County Board prior to voting for this massive project and its intrusive perimeter to please keep in mind that less is better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's all I have on the list. We'll move on down to reports of the committee. Mr. Wintley, Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met last Thursday, the 14th. Treasurer gave us an update on, as of December, a couple of revenue reports, our sales tax and state income tax.
Hold on. You've got one more on Zoom.
Oh,
That popped up.
Oh, he didn't get a hold of me later. Sorry. Brad Shippert. Do you want to go ahead and read your statement?
Yes, this is Angie Shippert. I apologize. I was searching for the button.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you may or may not know that corruption exists at the federal level within politicians. We certainly have witnessed this corruption locally in Lee County with the recent comptroller as an example. Another example of corruption is when a person uses his or her position for personal gain. Mr. Boonstra today gave a great recommendation to this committee, which is to let the Zoning Board of Appeals do their job and to reject and not be biased by those that insert their personal opinion or influence outside of this courtroom. How is it possible that a person on this committee can be included in a special team to work on a project with this solar project to make things more appealing to this committee? In my personal opinion, that is a conflict of interest. If this committee does not think that it is being used by its members for personal gain, then I think you are sorely mistaken. I really would like you to consider not approving this project for solar panels, as we've witnessed some great testimony and information from the Lawsons and the Laborers, other great questions that were brought up in the Zoning Board of Appeals. And if you truly do not wish to consider alternative opinions from those outside of this committee, then I think it should be unfair that people within this committee could insert their opinions at different times via access to other members of the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go back to,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
this is Adam Lowe's, another resident. I'm sorry. May I speak as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee County Board. I wanted to, I've been in front of you all in the past months talking of solar, industrial size solar, and I've asked for action on the ordinance. And I highlighted a feeling that the current ordinance at the time was really inadequate to handle industrial size solar projects. And I felt it important for you all to act. And I come on here today to say thank you that there was action taken. There was extraordinary measure taken to suspend rules and to improve some layouts parameters of industrial size solar, or what would impact industrial size solar. So I want to thank you for that. I think that it was extremely needed and necessary, and I hope that you all take close consideration as we go forward on what that ordinance is outlining perhaps in the future. I'm also aware that we move to pay closer attention with an ad hoc committee on that ordinance, and that further action is being looked at, and that I also appreciate the ability to participate in that. I think this is really important for the county going into the future. And based on the speakers that have talked after that last meeting, obviously there was another project that was moved to zoning prematurely before, unfortunately, the ordinance was fully corrected. And it put a lot more Lee County residents somewhat in peril with an inadequate ordinance. So, that is unfortunate, ultimately, but that's what we're faced with here today. So moving forward, I just really hope that we're evaluating the layout, the structure of this ordinance going forward, because it is really important as we move towards thousands more acres of solar on ag farmland. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else? All right, now let's move on to committee reports, and I apologize, Mr. Winley. I should have looked at the screen. So can you start over?
I can. Where was I? No, the minutes are in your packet. We had a report from the treasurer. Our revenues from sales tax, income tax are up slightly than other years. That's a good thing. We approved a bill of $15,930 to repair a new HVAC control system over in the new courts building. Today we received our last quarter from last year from the landfills, $119,824. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Winley. Transportation, solid waste, Mr. Sheeline.
Always have a problem with hitting the button right. Lee County Transportation Solid Waste Committee met 8 a.m. All members were present, and you have the report before you, and we have the claims, and I would move the claims, Mr. Chairman.
Got a first?
Second.
Second, from Mr. Norberg. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. As far as the rest of the report goes, we did have a request of a concerned citizen in regards to Lowell Park Road and Timber Creek, and in regards to that intersection. And so we're discussing, we had quite a bit of discussion on that. The Palmyra Township Highway Commissioner is requesting a reduction in speed. Just a reminder to everyone on the board, even though it is a township road, it is still the responsibility of the county board to change the speed limits. And so therefore, we're going to have the road commissioner come before the committee next month to formally ask for that reduction in speed on Wildcat Road. Other than that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions? We paid claims. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Sheeline. Let's go to properties, planning, and zoning, Mr. Bowers.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Properties met on Tuesday, January 12th, and Dave Valley was kind enough to chair that, and I attended remotely. The report is in your packet, and in lieu of time here, I'll just hit some highlights regarding the shovel ready grant that we've had for demo of the old jail. We are hopeful to hear the state awarding projects here shortly. Say the last part of this month, first part of next month, we should have some idea of whether that is in their approved or not approved state. Regarding the phone upgrade, we're having weekly meetings now with the vendors and the county IT and making good progress. Would expect to implement the health department within the next 3 weeks and with others to follow. Appreciate all the department heads giving information towards that project, and that is moving forward. Also, we are working on putting together a bid spec for tuck pointing and resealing the outside of the old courts building. And then we're working with an engineering firm, Tyson and Billy, to put together that spec, and we will be advertising that for bid as part of our capital improvement plan that our budget that we have. We do have a maintenance department replacement hire, just for information, that is being advertised for a maintenance custodial position. And that's all I have unless there are questions.
You have a solar ordinance meeting tomorrow?
Yes, I'm sorry. We do have a solar ordinance meeting tomorrow at 9, and
Public is welcome.
public is welcome, yes.
Any questions for Mr. Bowers? Thank you. Let's go to Lee Ogle Transportation System, Jim Schilling.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have the report in front of you, and I think Greg is, there's Greg. Greg is on, so if you have any questions in regards to his report, just a note that the meeting for creation of the mass transit district is being arranged, and that we will be a part of that discussion along with Ogle County. Greg, if you want to have any comments in that regard and how that's progressing.
Like you said, Jim, we are in the formative stages of just putting that meeting together. And so I hope to have something of more detail in the next month.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, move on to administrative services. Mr. Norbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple high notes. We talked about sexual harassment training. You guys will see an ordinance here later in the meeting. Reach out to your ad service committee members as far as whether or not board members need to take it and whether or not they need to be paid per diem on this. We will make a recommendation out of committee to the county board based off of what you guys let us know, so we can have that discussion in committee. We also began discussing the county administrator position, tabled it for further discussion here next month. So do the same thing, reach out to any and all committee members as to your opinion on it, so we can come up with a good job description if we want to continue to proceed forward with the administrator. All employees, we had the employee handbook. You should see that. Please look at that. We will hopefully pass that here next month. So if there's any corrections, thank you, Charlie, for being my grammatical English teacher. So he's found several already. And we forgot to pay claims, so I make a motion to pay the claims.
Second. Dave Valley seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That concludes my report.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Norbert. Move on to public safety, Mr. Copine.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Safety met Wednesday, January 14th. To make it short, I'm just going to say that the minutes are in your packet. If you have any questions on it, you can ask me. We had no old business, I'm sorry. Under new business, the sheriff had gone over some explanations of equipment that is going to be pursued or that they're going to need to replace here before long, but I'm not going to go through all of that. It's in the minutes. If we went through the claims, approved those, they were forwarded. Other than that, that's all I have. The meeting was adjourned at approximately 11:02 a.m.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Copine. We'll move down to Blackhawk Hills Regional Council, Mr. Nicholson.
we'd had no meeting.
Thank you. 911 Board, Mr. Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to the report already submitted by Deputy Corrections Director Dallas, I was informed also that the ETSD meeting dates are posted on the bulletin board. That Spillman Flex Public Safety Software between 911, Dixon PD, and Lee County Sheriff's Department begin soon, and the hardware is being delivered in January. The annual financial report required by the Illinois State Police 911 office is due January 31st, and that the AFR is based on most recently completed calendar year, not the county's fiscal year. Director Dallas also is working on that and explained that failure to file the report results in withholding the 911 surcharge funds by the state, that the annual Freedom of Information Act notice has been posted at the ETSB, that the next ETS meeting will be on Thursday, January 28th at 5:30 at the Lee County ECC building.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Tourism, Bill Palin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism report is on your desks and was emailed to you. It recites the fact that COVID-19 dried up any chance of ad sales to pay for a 2021 issue of Lee County Fun Guide. So we took an ad in the Northwest Illinois 2021 Visitor Guide. They cover our area in the state. We're pursuing other means of making some money, some other ideas, and we'll have a report on that later. And our share of the hotel, or the November share of hotel motel tax was $3,215.32. This concludes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Palin? Thank you. Katie White, Health Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I don't have a mic at my desk. The Board of Health met January 12th. The minutes and all the information is in your packet that you have received. The department is continuing they're doing their tracing efforts. We're all in vaccine mode, which is great. Plan B should be starting soon, which Kathy Ferguson is on tonight to give us an overall update what's going on. And the next meeting is not scheduled until March 9th. So with that, I will let Kathy go ahead and give you guys a good update of what's going on.
Thanks, Katie. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So as you probably know, we've been busy providing COVID vaccine. We completed phase 1A on Tuesday when we vaccinated about 270 residents and staff at Kreider. And when I say we've completed that phase, it means I feel good about having covered those groups. We were able to provide vaccine to KSB, who then vaccinated their employees and our first responders. There's a federal pharmacy program in place that was able to provide vaccine to all the long-term care facility residents and staff. And then the health department focused on all the other healthcare providers that aren't affiliated with a hospital. So we started 1B clinics yesterday, and today we had full clinics each day at the Elks. And tomorrow we'll be vaccinating staff of Dixon Public Schools. So all told, we'll have vaccinated close to 900 people this week. We won't be able to do that many every week because we receive an allocation from the state and probably not going to have that much vaccine in the next several weeks. But we schedule people as we can once we find out what that week's allocation is going to be. So let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about the link, and I know some of you probably have already used it, but we do have a link that is on our website. We've also posted it on social media. It's been in the paper, the radios, Facebook page, I think, ran it. But anyway, it's a link that you can sign up for if you are in phase 1B and get on our call list. And then once we do have a spot for you, we can give you a call to schedule that. Next week, we'll actually be starting some dose 2 clinics as well, which just makes scheduling even more challenging. That 2-dose requirement makes things a little bit more difficult. There is a vaccine being worked on right now by Johnson & Johnson that will be 1 dose only, and I'm really looking forward to that. I hope that's available soon, because that will really make things a lot easier. Some of our services are obviously on a limited basis right now because we have a significant amount of personnel time being used for our clinics. Let's see. We ask everybody to be patient. This is going to be a very long process. There will be vaccine for everybody who wants it eventually, but the state is receiving, a limited amount from the feds right now, and then they in turn allocate it to all the counties throughout the state. So it is going to be a process, but we're getting it out as soon as we can once we receive it. And let's see. As Katie said, we continue our contact tracing efforts. And as you all know, I think our region was able to go to Tier 1 resurgence mitigations, which was absolutely wonderful news. But I do want to ask everyone to remain vigilant, because we don't want things to creep up again like they did the last time we relaxed mitigations, especially with the new variant that's out there. So we still need to remain vigilant. So just a note on these clinics, even though planning them and running them it's quite taxing, but there's also the positive, because people are actually very excited and thankful to be receiving the vaccine. And so it's kind of a psychological boost for our staff after almost a year of pandemic response. We received our first report of an exposed resident on January 31st, 2020. So next week, we'll be marking 1 year that we've been responding to this. So I just want to say how proud I am of our staff, their hard work and dedication, and I'm appreciative of all of our community partners for their assistance as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Kathy, this is Katie again. I do want to echo what Kathy said, that they have been working very hard, and it's very nice to have some good news in this crazy time. So that's amazing. And Kathy, just really quickly, I know it's on the link, but can you explain what the 1B phase includes and who's eligible then for that vaccine?
I sure can. So it's anybody 65 and older. And then there are specific groups that they've outlined that are called, there's a lot of other groups that are also essential workers, but they identified certain ones to qualify for phase 1B. So that would be education. So it would be pre-K through 12th grade teachers, staff, administrators, food and agriculture, like processing, veterinary health, livestock services. There's manufacturing, postal service, public transit workers, grocery store workers, shelters and adult daycare, and corrections workers and inmates. So that's who's included in 1B.
Any questions? Mr.
Just want to make a comment. I got my COVID shot today, and the health department put the thing on at the Elks Club, and they did a magnificent job. It was an incredible amount of people they had going through their well-organized whatever. So I just wanted to compliment the health department.
Thank you. Any more? Mr. Copine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kathy, this is Mike Copine. I have a question regarding any mandate of people that are in the health services, I guess probably nursing homes or assisted living or anything like that. Where are they going to be if they refuse to take the vaccine? Can you help me with that?
Mike, I have not heard of any mandates to this point. Have you actually heard of some?
I've had a couple of people question me, and apparently the employer has said that Well, I don't know that there's actually been a mandate, but they are going to pursue making sure that all of the employees in a couple of locations take the vaccine.
I know some hospitals require their employees to take the flu shot, but if they don't take it, then they require them to wear masks. This was before COVID. They had to wear a mask during flu season. But I can't speak to the legality of them mandating this shot. I personally have not heard of any mandates yet.
Okay, I too would like to thank everybody that has black eyes from spending all the time that they have been doing all the work and the good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Tri-County Opportunities Council. Mr. Williams.
Marvin, you have to unmute yourself.
Hey, Marvin, can you unmute?
I didn't know it was muted. You guys must have muted it. Tri-County Opportunity Council Board of Directors did not meet last month. We'll be meeting on Tuesday the 26th at 7 o'clock by virtual. And the meeting will be at 7. So I will get a report from that meeting and I will send it to Becky after next week or so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that report.
Thank you. United Counties Council of Illinois, Doug Barster.
There was no December meeting, and I just received notice today there will not be a January membership meeting either. Most of you are probably getting the emails. I know Kathy forwards them also. So there's been a lot of information put out by UCCI, but as far as membership meetings, again, there was none in December. There will not be one next week either. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barster. Okay, moving on to claims. I need a motion to approve claims. Mr. Kitson.
Second.
Mr. Copine seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. I need a motion for deposit of funds, request for deposit of funds and orders paid in vacation. Mr. Wentley and Mr. Norberg. All those in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We got no old business. Got the operating engineers local 150 contract. Mr. Wentley.
Yeah, Bob, we don't have the necessary paperwork in yet, so I'd like to make a motion to table that until next month.
Got a motion to table. Mr. Farser, you seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The ordinance, the policy prohibiting sexual harassment for Lee County. It was held over from February. Mr. Norberg, you want to elaborate?
Yes, I'll make a motion to, I guess we'll hold this over to February. That way everybody gets a chance to look at it. Kind of came at us quick, but this is kind of expanding upon what the state had said, so.
Understand. Once again, I'm going to use a voice vote on ordinance and resolution in case, unless somebody requests roll call. So, yep, I'm working on that now. All right, I need a first and second for that. Mr. Bailey, first. We have a second. I'm sorry. Mr. Norberg. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Clerk and recorder annual report. I need a motion to accept that. Mr. Hudson and Mr. Kitson seconds it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. We did the Treasurer's Office quarterly report. Mr. Wintley makes a motion. Do we have a second to approve it? Mrs. White, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We go to the use of the LEC, the old LEC for substance abuse. We talked about it through committee and everything. Do I have a motion? Then we'll discuss it. Let's get a motion and a second on the table. Nicholson moves, and I got Mr. Norberg seconds it. Any discussion on this?
I think the only open item was, it was moved forward with the understanding that we would have a written agreement. If by chance the state did grant us the money to tear down the old jail, we would need to obviously take advantage of that right away, so.
There's also, Charlie talked about a MOU on that. The motion, we wanted to include that memorandum of understanding with that motion. So I don't know if we have to redo the motion with that involved, Charlie, or how would you like to do that? Whoever made the motion, I don't remember. Do you want to amend it?
I made the motion and I would make motion with the amendment in it. That's the way it came out of committee, was the understanding that if we did get the grant to tear down the old LEC, they'd have to leave. So Charlie will have to write that up.
All right.
And I'll second.
Okay. I've got a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Mr. Wentley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a minute to say that Kathy Myers, tonight's her last meeting, and what a fitting one, a nice short one tonight for you, Kathy. Kathy's been with us since 1999. She's been our clerk since 2010. Runs a top-notch department. And that reflects on the leadership that she put into that department. I've worked with her my whole tenure on the board. Always had an answer. So I just want to wish you luck. We're going to miss your face. And you can be a full-time grandma now. So thanks a lot, Kathy, for what you've done.
It has been an honor to serve as your clerk, and I have to say I have been blessed over the 10 years that I've been clerk with a fabulous staff. So I assure you, I am leaving you in great hands, and I'm only a phone call away. So, but thank you very much, and I'm very excited, and I'm going to look forward to being retired and being a full-time grandma.
There you go.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, for your service and your help. All right, we'll move down to segue right into a resolution appointing Nancy Peterson, Lee County Clerk Recorder, effective February 1st, 2020, term ending November 30th, 2022. Mr. Considine moves, Mr. Nicholson seconds. Any discussion? All right, no discussion. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I got a resolution appointing Kevin Marks to the Quad Cities Regional Economic Development Authority for a term ending September 19th, 2023. Do I have a
Mr. Chairman,
motion?
I say we do all of them at the same time.
I can do this one, then we're going to do the next three at the same time. Is that a motion?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a second? Mr. Kitson seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. So the next three resolutions we're going to do, the appointment of Jared Nicholson as trustee of Pawpaw Sanitary District, Charles A. Sellers as trustee of the Pawpaw Sanitary District, and Robert Rue as trustee of the Pawpaw Sanitary District. I need a motion for that. Mr. Considine moved. Mr. Kitson seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. No executive session, miles and per diem. Do I have a motion to pay it? Mr. Kitson? I need a second. Mr. Bally seconds it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All bills and appropriations. Do I need a motion for that?
Yes.
We'll roll call that. I need a motion for all bills and appropriations allowed by roll call vote. Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Forster seconds it. Gonna have to be a roll call. Kathy?
Hudson, Humphrey,
Yes.
Kitson,
Yes.
Popine,
Yes.
McLean,
Yes.
Mamini,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Norberg,
Yes.
Kalen,
Yes.
Sheline,
Yes.
Shippert,
Yes.
Scrogstad,
Yes.
Wentling,
Yes.
White, Williams,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Allen, Valley,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Considine,
Yes.
Barster,
Yes.
Gibbler,
Yes.
Horstman,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Motion for adjournment. Mr. Kitson, Mr. Bauer seconds it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thanks for correcting the spelling of my name.